Here is our review on slope and everything that deals with slope. So starting with definition, slope describes the steepness of a line. Okay, think about the ski slopes. It is also called rate of change. There are 4 different types. So there is positive going up, negative coming down, 0 is going to be our horizontal lines. Okay, there's 0 change, there's no steepness, versus undefined, that is when we have our vertical up and down line. Okay. To find slope from a table, we are going to find the change in y over the change in x. Okay, so again, we're finding change in y over the change in x. So my axis to go from -2 to 0, -2 to -1, -1 to 0, we went up by 2. So I'm going to put a +2. 0 to 2 on a number line, I went up by 2. 2 to 4, I went up by 2. 0 to 1 for the y, I went up by 1. It's going to be a positive. 1 to 2, I went up by 1. 2 to 3, I went up by 1. So my slope, my change in y over change in x was 1 over 2. Okay, or if you want to put it as +1 over +2, you can also do that. But biggest thing, remembering that you're putting y on top. Coming over here. So -1 to 0, I went up by 1. 0 to 1, I went up by 1. 1 to 2, up by 1. 4 minus 1. 4 to 1, I went down by 3. 1 to -2, I went down by 3. -2 to -5, I went down by 3. So my change in y over change in x, my y went down by 3. My x went up by 1. Here is what my slope is. We didn't just talk about slope though, we also talked about equations, okay, using slope. So you'll remember our equation was y equals mx plus b, where m was my slope and b was my y-intercept. Okay, remember y-intercept, that is going to be where is the graph intercepting the y-axis? Okay, where is the line crossing the y-axis? And it's always going to be the y-axis that has y in the name. That's what we're going to focus on now. So taking a look, here's this equation. Okay, y equals mx plus b. So m is going to be my m, which in this case is 1 over 4. Most of the time we're writing slope as a fraction. Okay, what does this mean? Well, that means that it's positive. Okay, it's going to be going up. And more specifically, it's going to go up 1 unit. And then it's going to go over right 4 units. Okay. I'm going to go up 1 unit, and then I'm going to go over 4 units to the right because it's positive. What's the y-intercept? Y-intercept is always a number by itself. So my y-intercept is going to be b, which in this case is going to be +3. What does this mean? Okay. This means that the graph crosses the y-axis at 3. My beginning point, okay? B, my beginning point. What if you're already given the equation? So let's put some points on the graph. Let's go ahead and put a point where it's crossing the y-axis. Hey, here is my y-axis. So B is going to be a +2. okay? Going up 1. And then if I go here, I'm not in the I'm in the middle of a box. I'm not actually touching the line yet. So I'm going to go over 1 more box. Hey, I can put a point here. My line is going directly through the corner of a box. So I went up 1 box, and then I went over 2 boxes to the right. My slope is going to be 1/2. Putting all of that together then, y equals 1/2 x plus 2 is going to be my final equation. We're going to do a few more practice problems like this. And here's the equation. So what is the slope? Okay, remember our equation, y equals mx plus b. So slope is m, which in this case is going to be in front of the x. So that's going to be my slope, -2/3. Okay. This means, so I'm going to make the 2 be negative, the 3 be positive. Remember, we only make one number be negative. So my graph goes down 2 units and then over to the right 3 units. What's the y-intercept? Y-intercept is going to be b. If we look at where b is at +3. Okay. I don't know why we use 3 for everything. Okay, that's where it's crossing the y-axis when it's 3. The last thing that we're going to talk about is writing these equations. Okay, we kind of did this a little bit on the front. So again, we want to know what is m and we want to know what is b. So b here is y. So I'm crossing the y-axis at -2 for my b. I'm going to draw my triangle. So I go up 1. And then there's another point here. So that's why I'm going up 1. So that's me a +1. Then 1, 2, 3 to the right is going to be positive. My slope is going to be 1/3. Putting all of that together, then I've got y equals 1/3 x minus 2. Looking at the next graph, so there's a point here and there's a point here. So what's my slope? What is my y-intercept? Well, I'm crossing the y-axis at +2. My slope, I know, is going to be negative. So I go up 1, so +1. And then I go over 1 long box to the left. Okay, I think some of you it was helpful when we kind of did these. Okay, so my equation, y equals 1/-1x plus 2. Or you could also just write it as y equals -1x plus 2. But I think a lot of you like it as the fraction. Last one, we've got to find the slope from the table. We did this earlier on the front. So remember, find slope. It's going to be the change in y over the change in x. So let's see, let's switch things up. How's y changing? So from 1 to 3, I go up by 2. 3 to 5, I go up by 2. 5 to 7, I go up by 2. So my change in y is a +2. Change in x, I'm going up by 1 every time. Putting all of this together, so here's my slope. Okay, b is going to be where x equals 0. So looking at the graph, they found that for us. So my equation for y equals mx plus b, I've got y equals, my slope is 2/1x, and b is going to be equal to a +3 because this is where y is equal to a number when x is equal to 0.